Welcome to Deep Discussions Live and Learn podcast. Thank you so much for your continued support of Deep Discussion and its mission to inspire a better tomorrow. I'm so thankful for your continued support. It is an honor and a privilege to be gifted with this opportunity and the many gifts that God has given me to inspire those around me and to be a voice of reason, of understanding, and just some kind of light to anyone that may be experiencing difficult and challenging times in their life. So today, I am privileged to have the presence of a dear friend of mine who's a licensed clinical professional counselor and approved supervisor with the state of Maryland. She's a graduate of Bowie State University with her master's in counseling psychology, and she's also a graduate of Boston College with her bachelor's in psychology as well. She specializes in substance use, racial identity, and women's issues. And again, she's a very dear friend of mine who decided to grace deep discussions with her presence. I welcome you, Raimi Harvell. Hello, Raimi. How are you today?
I'm lovely, Walter. Thank you so much for having me. And it is an honor to be invited to the podcast. So thank you for having me.
Well, I look forward to our discussion and you sharing some key insight about today's discussion.
Awesome.
So before we go into today's discussion, which is entitled Breaking Bad Habits and Erasing Addictions, I like to start off every episode, as you know, with a poem that I wrote, and this one is entitled Constricted. Laying at its mercy and life's expense, clinging to all contained in its existence. The struggle is real as well as the pain. The quick sensation, no long-term gain. What happens now is all that you deem. Later is no longer all that it seems. Conditioned to think it's your sole lifeline, ignoring your body's whole design. Resisting the urge, still craving its appeal. Becoming second nature, you can't even feel. Its substance does thinking on your behalf. Your mind is numb at material's wrath. How much of you will it have to consume for you to recover and leave the room? Don't let it be the way you depart. Regain control. Here's where it starts. Bad habits are a crutch that cripples more than carry. Relying on its aid makes you its mercenary.
Mm.
So again, today's title is Breaking Bad Habits and Erasing Addictions. And I was inspired to talk to you about this. I've come up with these topics at such random moments, so I can't remember the exact moment that I decided to have this discussion. But what I will share is recently, my wife and I had went to Philly for her grandmother's funeral, and on the way back home, we drove down Kissington Avenue, and
Yikes.
I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that, but it was a bit traumatic for me to drive down that street to see the things that I saw, and it was just really like I was sitting in bed, laying in bed that night, and my wife was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just still kind of traumatized by what we saw." So, with that being a recent event and is pretty much relevant to what we're discussing today, I can't remember what inspired me to talk about this. You know, God put something on my heart, so somebody out there needs to hear this message. So, first, we're going to start by learning more about you, Raimi. Tell us more about yourself, including where you're from, what inspired you to go into this profession, and one unique thing about yourself.
Okay. So you can't hear it in my voice. I get told that all the time, but where I'm from New York. BX stand up, Bronx all day. But I'm from New York City, and I originally that's actually originally what got me into the field. So just growing up in New York City and seeing so many things,
I can
so
imagine.
much. I think when I went to college, I went to undergrad, my initial plan was to be an OBGYN. And I took a class called Women, Crime, and the Law, and I had an internship in New York City, working at a law firm. And we looked at how the difference between like how women were sentenced as opposed to men. And I know there's also a racial aspect there, but they were very specific looking at gender. And a lot of the women, substance abuse problems, domestic violence, you know, single mothers, things like that. And like that's what kind of got them into the legal system. And that just really pushed me to be like, hey, wait a minute, maybe obstetrics is not really where my heart lies. Like this is my passion, like the mental health field, the sociological aspect of just what makes people tick. And so that's what kind of set me on this path. I moved to Maryland after college for because I wanted to go to grad school, and then decided when I got here I didn't want to go to grad school for a while. And then I went to Bowie a couple of years later, and they have a phenomenal mental health series of master's programs, and just absolutely fell in love with the field. Interestingly enough, substance abuse was the one track I was not interested in. I don't know how much people know about Maryland that are watching. Maryland has a huge opioid problem, as do most coastal towns. I think Maryland gets a bad rap, particularly Baltimore, where they talk about, oh, you know, the what is it, the North Avenue lean and all of that. Anywhere along the coast where you have ports, you're going to see higher sort of rates of substance abuse. But I mean, America in general has an opioid problem. It's not confined to major cities. It's not confined to a color, creed, or anything. But I grew up with an older sister who had a pretty significant substance abuse problem for most of my childhood. And so it hit a little too close to home. And so it's like that was the one field I didn't want to go into. And I actually fell into a job shortly after getting married in substance abuse. And my job at the time was an hour and about 20 minutes away. And I was like, I can't keep making this drive. The job with substance abuse was maybe 15 minutes away up in Bel Air. And I said, okay, I'm gonna give it a go. I'm gonna give it a go. Fell in love. I was like, what was I thinking? These are my people. Because I think there's something to be said for understanding the connection between pain and wanting to manage it, wanting to deal with it. And that's physical pain, mental pain, spiritual pain. We are simply not equipped. We're not taught pain relief skills outside of like the industrial complex of, you know, big pharma. You know, you throw a pill at it. Oh, you have a headache, take a Tylenol.
Right.
You know,
yep.
You hurt your back. You know, I'm sure people can see right now, I have a brace on right now. I'm seeing a chiropractor, and very specifically avoiding pain medication because I don't want to wind up in that type of cycle. And it actually helps better. You know, but we're not taught those things. We're really pushed into pills, and a lot of our opioid crisis is because of medication. You know, and like fentanyl's become the big thing. Fentanyl's not new. You can find it in any emergency room, honey. It's not. It's literally been around for eons. You know, but anything is great when it's used appropriately. When it's not, it becomes a problem. And now we have a whole, you know, globe worth of people and things that are using it inappropriately, and now here we are. And so I think it's really important to address that and provide people appropriate outlets to manage their pain across the board: physical, mental, spiritual. And so that's kind of where I come in when it comes to the mental health. That's what I do on a daily basis. It's what I love. A unique fact about me: I live in Maryland. I am super allergic to shellfish. And I tend to choose places and things that throw me right into the fire. So, you know, this is the home of what the blue crab, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And y'all eat it all the time. Does nothing, like, you know, liquid balls of death. My my bachelorette party, I went to New Orleans. They're like they
Oh my
put
God.
shellfish, shrimp, crawfish, all the things in everything. And if they don't put it in there, then they also add pork, which I also don't eat.
Oh my.
I'm like a glutton for punishment when it comes to food. But hey, you know,
He just be trying to set you up to fail, huh?
I do it to myself. So yeah.
Well, I mean, you got the right profession. At least you know how to handle it. So yeah, I guess
Yes,
you
yes.
can.
I know that it is my own self-torture there.
Well, thank you for that. You know, for that bit of information, and you know, I know you quite well, so you're a very, very unique and and interesting individuals. So
Thank
for people to hear all of that, like for you to even share all of that information just now, just kind of like woke me up and made me say, whoa. Because those are things that people don't think about. Like the whole
Yeah.
thing about, how people are kind of like pushed to, do pills and do medication, because you and I both know as well as anybody, everything is about a dollar bill these days. So
Hello.
instead of, going through dealing with your pain, the natural way, just,
Mhm.
oh, I'll give you some money so I don't have to go through all of that. So
Mhm.
that was
I mean,
really
you actually hit the nail on the head, because I think about even my own journey right now to get my back taken care of. Like, to go to a PCP and get pain meds, that's covered by my insurance. What
mhm.
isn't covered is chiropractic care. Now, thankfully,
Okay.
I'm financially in a place where I can get it done
Right.
and it's not hurting me, but a lot of people can't. But if your insurance covers going to pain management, where you're paying a $5 copay as opposed to, say, $90 for a chiropractor that you have to see 2 times a week. Yeah, I'm going to go. Most people are going to say, well, I'm going to go to pain management then,
Yeah.
but what they're not telling you is now pain management becomes something that's lifelong,
Yeah.
and my chiropractor is, the plan is to have me done with treatment within the next 3 months, so we really are set up, and it's about that dollar.
Yep. And people aren't aware of that information that you just shared, such as myself. I had no idea that physical therapy and all of that stuff isn't even covered under a lot of health insurance plans. So
Mm-hmm.
all right, so we're going to segue now to the next question I wanted to ask you. As many of you know, I'm a life skills and empowerment coach, and one of the things that I do is I try to inspire and motivate others. Um, one of the things I try to do is assist them in avoiding unhealthy habits and
Mm-hmm.
breaking bad ones and establishing healthy, positive behaviors. So if I'm meeting with someone
Mm-hmm.
and something doesn't seem right about them, like what are some red flags that I should notice about someone? Because obviously I'm just a life coach. My skills and my abilities can only go but so far. But
Sure.
if I know someone and I say, yeah, I think this might be someone that needs to, see
Mm-hmm.
Raimi. What kind of red flags or what things should I be aware of when meeting with them?
Well, I would say any noticeable, like, significant changes. So if you see someone, and they present one way for 3 sessions they may have with you, let's say a life coaching package, because I have a friend who does coaching as well, and she typically does them in packages. So, like, let's say 3 sessions in, their behavior drastically changes, or they present with a bizarre appearance. It's the summer, they come in a coat, you know. Now, if it's a teenager, they could just be
Yeah,
wearing a
I was
hoodie
going
and
to
be
say.
sure. But but if it's like today was what, 90 degrees, and if they came in wearing a coat, that's bizarre, because that's abnormal. That's not like that's not an appropriate um that's not an appropriate dress for the weather,
Right.
or the season. If someone comes in and they have, it's the summer and they have on long sleeves or long pants, or it's the winter, they have on, shorts and a t-shirt, and it's cold outside. Like, those sorts of things are things to kind of assess, maybe something's off here. Also, noticeable changes in just how they present. So if you have someone that's normally very boisterous and very open to talking with you, and they come in and their demeanor is markedly different, so now they're very closed off, their affect is flat, those sorts of things, those may be something to begin a collaboration, because I'm wholeheartedly believe in, like, treating people, like, holistically.
Mhm.
And I know that this catches some flack, because some, therapists and social workers are like, coaching's different and that's not what we do and that's not okay. And, or this is, psychiatry. Like, you treat people from all aspects of it. So, like,
Right.
to me, that would say, okay, so you know what, I suggest you let's get you evaluated. Maybe let's get you to a psychologist to get you evaluated. Let me get you to a therapist, so that we can work on some of the things. They can work on some things that I can't work on, because that's not my skill set, because there are like, present day, everyday activities of daily living stuff that you do that I can't do. That's just not in my wheelhouse, where you're saying, okay, let's really build those positive everyday life skills that are going to get you that's not what I do. And so it would say to begin that collaboration and say, okay, this is something different. Oh, but there's a trauma that's happening. I want you to treat that trauma. We're still going to work on those daily living skills and stuff to get you. That's what, what brought you in. But, oh, there's some stuff behind it that I can't touch. You collaborate. You say, let's get you evaluated. Let's get someone else on the team so that we can all be working together to move forward.
Oh, okay, absolutely. And see, and like to kind of piggyback off what you said about like all of the therapists and what they're saying about coaching, that's one of the skills that you have to have as a coach is knowing what your limits are and what you can and can't do.
Absolutely.
The more and more I study about coaching, a lot of the times that's why people get coaching and therapists. Like they always try to mix the two or think the two are the same, and it's not. I
No.
do things more from I like to, when I have sessions, I like to let the client kind of control the session. And,
Mhm.
I may ask questions and may offer suggestions, but, when it comes to like therapy and things of that nature, it's a little bit more deeper.
Oh, yeah.
My presence is more surface level. So,
Hmm.
and that's a skill that you have to have as a life coach is being willing to, or understanding and knowing, look, my limits or my boundaries are only but so far, and building those
Absolutely.
connections with people who, if you have a client that needs to go further, you can refer them to them or send them that way.
Hmm.
So I
And I
appreciate that.
think, and the flip side of that, of course, is like as a therapist, being recognizing the limits of yours and saying, you know what, this is beyond my wheelhouse. I'm going to get you to that person that can give you that day to day. Like I may be talking about your past and how your past informs your present, but I'm not necessarily going to do, those day to day getting your hands dirty skills that you're giving them to like progress their life forward. It's just, they work in tandem together
Yeah.
to make a person a complete individual.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And like what may happen sometimes is I'll be coaching someone and I'm like trying to help them progress or help them advance, develop their life skills or whatever. And, sometimes you may just say they're having a hard time figuring out something or finding something. And it could be because of an early experience or something.
Yes.
And if that's, discovered or recognized, I could say, all right, then maybe I need to, send you to a therapist to have a talk with you. And,
Yeah.
or someone could just think automatically, oh, I need to go seek therapy. But sometimes it may not be that. Like you said, it may just be, oh, they just need someone that they can have a conversation with, talk about surface level stuff, kind of like inspire them and motivate them. So, like you
Absolutely.
said, it works both ways. And that's why it's
Yes.
important to have these relationships between coaches and therapists who understands, each other's wheelhouse.
Absolutely. 100%.
All right. So the next question that I wanted to ask you, so we I put this together a long time ago, but so it's not as recent. But I was in a um Black mental health awareness speaker series back in May, going like late May,
I
and
remember. I remember you telling us about that. Yeah.
yeah, and so when I participated in that series, it was a very rewarding opportunity and experience. Any opportunity that I get to encourage and inspire people to be, to be open minded and to just be aware of things, because the problem that we run into, especially in the Black community, is when we say we have a problem, we feel like, that pushes us two steps back, because
Hmm.
you and I both know it's always a battle just to stay ahead. And it's even
Hello.
tougher to get ahead. So as soon as you
Hmm.
recognize that you have a problem, it feels like you're pushing yourself back.
Right. I hear
So
you.
being a part of that series, it was important. And I highlighted what I called the score of mental health, where I highlighted the different life skills that is essential to recognizing and tackling mental health awareness issues that people may have. So, from your perspective, can you share some insight or recommendations with people in the Black community who may find themselves struggling with mental health?
I think it's so first and foremost, I think this is beautiful. And the series that you participate in also beautiful. Because there's so much stigma in our community
Yes,
about mental health treatment and needing mental health. The number of clients I've had that are like, well, I just don't want to, I don't want people thinking I'm crazy. That's a pejorative word.
exactly.
Like we're not doing that. Like there's no shame in having a mental illness, experiencing a mental health episode. Like it's a part of the human experience. I had a client just recently ask me, they were like, well, I just don't want to like is that going to make me not broken? And I was like, when did you break, honey? What do you need to see a doctor, like an orthopedist? Is something broken? Because mentally, that like we don't, I don't use those words, you know. And so I think it's important to really break down that stigma. And I'm loving the conversations that we're having as a people now, just you know, whether it's older millennials, the Gen Zers, or Generation Alpha, even now, like really placing an importance on mental health. So some of the resources that I would say, Black Therapist Rock, a phenomenal one. So that's going to get you, if you're a Black person, to a Black therapist, very specifically Black, African American, someone across the diaspora that identifies with you, and they're nationwide. So if you're in California, you can find a Black therapist in California. You know, I think I've even seen some that are in like the Caribbean, and what have you. So it's a really great network that I'm also a part of. And you know, what's really nice is that they network with one another. So I've even had, I had someone from New York reach out for help, and I'm not licensed in the state of New York, so I couldn't help them. But I immediately went to the director, like, hey, is anybody taking any clients right now in this area? I think within an hour, I had like 7 people contact me. I have space, tell them to call me. This is my information, pass it on. You know, so Black Therapist Rock, a phenomenal one. Another one is specifically for Black women, Therapy for Black Girls. That's another directory of resources here in NAMI. Is another great resource here in Maryland, the state of Maryland. Every single county has a crisis hotline that you can contact, and they will get you immediate help if you're in an acute crisis. They can also point you in the right direction for local mental health agencies. I'm going to shout out a friend of mine who has a phenomenal virtual practice here in the state of Maryland, Methods Therapy, and it's founded by Dr. Sade Dunn. She's an absolutely phenomenal clinician and professor at Bowie State. She does some great work, has some phenomenal clinicians, and they run the gamut. Their virtual practice. So what's really nice is like all you have to do is be located in the state of Maryland or DC, because they're licensed in both places, and they can see you. And I mean, just a really, really wonderful practice. So if someone is looking, Methods Therapy, that's a local one. Another great one is Precision Mental Health. That's located up in Baltimore. Dr. Dunn is, if you needed a physical location, is located down in Prince George's County. But 2 great practices, Precision Mental Health, and they have some great clinicians there as well. And what's really, really nice is you don't have to look like us. Because here's the thing, while I'm a Black woman and I practice in a way that is very respective of my identities, I think it's also important to recognize that like mental health doesn't discriminate. You know what I
Right,
mean? And
exactly.
so having an openness and a willingness to be culturally competent, and be willing and open to learning about others. You know, one of my favorite clients, a very an older conservative Republican man who we did some excellent work, because it's not about who, it's like, hey, what can I help you with today? What are you struggling with? Like diagnoses and things like that, they have value for insurance companies. But at the end of the day, I could find you 6 people with depression and it would manifest differently in their lives. So like, let's talk about you and your issues and how we can make moves today. And so I find that like those 2 practices, Methods and Precision, have clinicians that understand that, where they're like, hey, we want to meet you where you're at, and we're going to walk with you. So those are local. But again, like I said, Black Therapist Rock, Therapy for Black Girls. NAMI is also a good one. And honestly, good old fashioned Psychology Today has, I mean, if you're licensed, you more than likely have a profile on there, and you can filter it for your needs. If you're like, hey, I need someone who's specialized in LGBTQIA issues, they will pull up clinicians that do that. Hey, I need a bilingual therapist. They will pull that up. So it's you know, if you're looking for like the biggest database, that would be the place to start.
Oh yeah, that's great advice, and I thank you for that, because in a time like now, there's so many different personalities and so many
Mm-hmm.
different, so much diversity in in our
Mm-hmm.
community, in our country, that, having those resources available to people, because it's really hard to, it's already, it's already a hard step to first acknowledge that you need help. So,
Absolutely.
for that help to be available is crucial, because, getting past that first step is the toughest step. But then once you get past that step and get there, they need to make sure that they have the necessary resources for that. So I thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the last question I'm gonna ask you before we segue into the next segment. Um, so we all know, and I think that this is really like the meat and potatoes of the discussion. As so we all know, bad behaviors can develop into addictions.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some examples of, or you can give me one example if you want, of this dynamic that you've seen in your field, and how do you engage in clients that exhibit that, that has a bad behavior? They do something, and it may not seem too bad. Maybe, like maybe they bite their nails or something like that, or
Mm-hmm.
something that, that low level. Then the next thing you know, it becomes something else. And
Mm-hmm.
like, do you see things like that? And if so, can you give us an example?
Oh, all the time. All the time. I think that, it's easy to pin when people think addiction, they think of substance abuse, of course. So you're like
Right.
drugs, and most people like to brush down past it, but of course, alcohol. But literally anything can become an addiction.
Yep.
Um, across the board, anything. There are, I think it's 207 different versions of Alcoholics Anonymous. So alcohol, well, they'll just change the actual addiction, but it's like Alcoholics Anonymous, love Addicts Anonymous, like things like that. Like there are 207 different versions of it. So you can become addicted to anything. I would say I'm going to use actually a very innocuous one: exercise. I'll use one that's considered pretty positive. So you'll see people who, start out in the gym, or they start out with something small. I might go to the gym once a week, or I might work out at home once or twice a week. And as people start to see changes, or they start to grow, muscles and things like that, then they're in the gym 7 days a week. That can, progress, of course, into multiple times a day. And then you look up, and this person now has body dysmorphia, because the image that they're trying to obtain, when that they were trying to obtain at the beginning, like when they first started their workout journey, they'll never quite get to that. They may be in phenomenal shape. They may look great. Now they're not eating properly. They're not feeling, oh, well, I want to get skinnier. So, I think the word is, I'm going to probably say it incorrectly, orthorexia, I think is the term
I think
for
it's
it.
anorexia.
No, 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 no. I'm not talking about the eating disorder. I think that it's orthorexia is I believe the exercise one.
Oh,
Um,
exercise. Okay,
but
got you, got you.
but
Okay.
yeah, you'll see of course anorexia, bulimia, things that develop because they've developed body dysmorphia. Who they see when they look in the mirror is not actually who they're seeing. They're seeing this
Mhm.
idealized version of self that they can never quite achieve. So they're going to keep working out harder. They're going to eat less. They're going to eat, they're taking all these supplements and things like that that are not healthy. They're not, because they become obsessed with the idea of what they want to see, you know? And what started out as something small, a healthy habit, now becomes something that has become an addiction, and it's now become a negative addiction, So it's not always just, oh, I started out, partying, and then all of a sudden now, I'm a hardcore drug addict. You can literally be, and anybody. I mean, they make literal TV shows about it. What's the My 600 Pound Life?
Oh
Everybody's got to,
yeah,
I mean, but honestly, everybody's got to eat, right? So like
yeah,
we
yeah.
all we all have a meal, and you look up and there are people who are literally eating themselves to death. So
That's a good one there. I don't think anybody would have thought of exercising like. And here I said, what's a bad habit that turned into an addiction? You picked one that people, try to encourage people to do, but
yeah.
exercising can definitely become a bad habit. I've seen it. I had a friend of mine that used to like go running. I think she went either every 2 days or something. Like, she used to run a lot, put it to you that way. And it got to a point where she injured herself,
Hmm.
and she would like vent to me and be frustrated about it, because what she tried to do is she tried to run a lot because she knows she likes to eat a lot. So she
Hmm.
tries to balance it out. She say, I don't want to have to cut back eating certain things, so I run a lot. But then she got hit with this injury. So it's like your mind convinces you
Yep.
to live or do things one way, but then your body's like, nah, that's not the way you're supposed to be doing it. There's got to
Hmm.
be a balance somewhere between the two.
Hmm.
So that was actually a great example. I wasn't even ready for that, but I'm glad you said that. So as we close out the interview segment, I'll give my 2 cents on this discussion. Um, Bad habits turns to addictions when they become dependence and lifelines. If you're
Hmm.
unable to thrive without practicing a bad habit, you leave yourself vulnerable with failure, while failure remains inevitable. Break your bad habits before you become a source of dependency and or addiction.
Hmm.
So now we're going to segue over to my spiritual relief segment, and this is where I usually share a Bible verse and give my thoughts on it. If you want to give your thoughts on it, you can. You're not obligated to do so. But this platform was given to me by God, so my way of giving back and at least recognizing Him is to include Him in my shows.
I know
So
that's right.
so um so today's spiritual relief segment comes from First Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. And it reads, "You have never been tempted to sin in any different way than other people. God is faithful. He will not allow you to be tempted more than you can take. But when you are tempted, he will make a way for you to keep from falling into sin." So my thoughts on this verse is the first one is made in God's image. We're never made to be broken or to break. He created us with the vision that we will trust in him and count on his guidance when we're troubled. And that one really spoke to me because I've been dealing with, a lot of stressful situations between, my job and adjusting to becoming a parent and all of that stuff. So a lot of the times, you find yourself saying, "Oh, I just need a break. I just need to get away. I need to forget about things." But, you know, what do you do to forget about things? Like every time I tell my wife I'm stressed out or worried about stuff, she'll say, "Talk to God. Have a conversation
Hmm.
with God. Make sure God knows that you knows your troubles and he hears it from you because God knows everything that's going on with us. But if we don't if we don't meet with him to talk to him about it, then he's going to think that we're treating it as if we don't need him and we can rely on things around us instead of him. So
Hmm.
that's one of the things that verse said to me. And the last thing is when faced with bad habits and addictions, it comes from lack of faith in God's ability to heal and lead you through troubled pastures. And again, that pretty much speaks to the same thing that I said. It's important that we show our faith in God because we're all bound to deal with a tough time. Something is going to come up that stresses us out. And that's God's way of testing us, saying, "Do you still trust me?"
Hmm.
And it's your job to say, "Yes, I do," and show him that you do trust him.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you have anything you want to share. If not, we can transition to my last segment called "In My Opinion."
Well, I will say I do. So I'm not a Christian-based counselor. I'll be very honest about that. However,
And that's okay.
I do consider myself a Christian. And with that being said, I think that because I'm not a Christian-based counselor, what I do is I try to be respectful of everybody's faith, because everybody believes in something. Even if you're an atheist, what you believe is that there's nothing out there. So like that is your belief, that's your system, that's what works. And so I think that you're absolutely right in that, like, leaning on faith to whatever whomever you pray to. In my case that is God, in your case that is God. I think allows you to do the work, you know. I love what you said about having a talk with him. It reminds me of one of my favorite, like, old school hymns, "Have a little talk with Jesus, tell him all about your troubles." And that was something my nanny used to say, because it's so important to verbalize and name something. And whether you tell it to God, whether you tell it to your therapist, whether you tell it to your life coach, verbalizing it, vocalizing it allows it to become a thing. And when you make something a thing, you can do something with it. You can do something
Absolutely.
with that thing, to that thing. And so often people think that Christianity, faith, any faith system is like opposed to counseling, to coaching and things like that. And it's not. It's I want to include what is your faith background? How is that important in your life? What role does it play? Oh, that's how you seek guidance. Okay, then we're going to incorporate that into your counseling perspective. God created all of it. Therapy, coaching,
Yep.
like that. God is in all of that. So we don't have to work against each other. If God is pushing you and leading you to say that you need to get some more help and you need to go see a therapist, you need to go see a coach, then do that. And do that with somebody who's going to be affirming of who you are, what you believe in, and how you move about this world. So that's what God has led them to do and is leading them to do for you in your life. So I love what you said. Like, have that talk, verbalize it so that you can then do something about it.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said that about, like, the coaches, the therapists, and everyone is somebody that God assigned us, God, made available
Absolutely.
to you. So recognizing that you need help, or,
Mm,
seeking help, is a sign that there is someone or something that's, beyond what you can handle. And sometimes
absolutely.
that's what we need to be reminded, that, there's things greater than ourselves that, we need to use, that God gave us to help us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Mm-hmm.
that was a really good point that you shared there. I appreciate that. So now the last segment is entitled "In My Opinion." I finally came up with a name for this segment. If you don't like it,
Okay.
oh well, nobody ever gave me an opinion or gave me a suggestion on it. So this one is a top 5 list of something that is related to what we discussed. And what I chose today was worst habits to practice, which can become addictions, in my opinion.
Okay.
Remember that part, in my opinion. I don't know how
I
many
like
of you
it.
watch First Take when Stephen A. Smith say fluid. It's fluid. For me, it's in my opinion.
I like this. Okay.
So and just a quick note, I stayed clear of the serious ones like smoking and drinking. So
Fair.
I didn't use those. And again, Raimi, you can either share your own list of addictions or give your thoughts on the list that I provide.
Okay.
So the top 5 that I provided were lying,
Mm,
cheating,
mm-hmm.
unhealthy eating,
Mm-hmm.
always saying yes, which
Ooh.
I'm guilty of.
Ooh.
Well, I used to be guilty of, and idleness. So those are the
What was
5
that
that
last one?
idleness. So basically
Oh,
sitting still, not doing anything, idle.
yes, yes.
So that's the top 5 that I picked. If you have your own 5 or you want to comment on my list,
Shh.
feel free.
Man, you preach the sermon. You preach the sermon with them 5. Okay. Like, the only thing I might add is it, like, I would say idleness slash procrastination. Because
Yes.
I feel like
Okay.
people understand that understand it from that. They're like, oh, somebody
Yes.
like, I'm not
Yes.
idle. And then we say, do you procrastinate? They're like,
Exactly. Yeah.
okay. But
I should have
I
said
really want to touch really quickly on that one about always saying yes, because
yeah.
oh my goodness, I wish people realized how much people pleasing we do on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as Black people, things like code switching and stuff, that's people pleasing. That's saying yes
Yeah.
to, like, hey, I understand that, like, maybe my presentation's not palatable for you, so I'm going to change it, you know?
Yeah.
And in your mind, you may not necessarily think of that as saying yes, but you are saying yes. You're saying yes to, like, that standard and saying, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
change myself for the standard. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I've never done it. Obviously, I have. I've worked in spaces, non-majority spaces. But I think people pleasing is the fastest ways to self dissatisfaction in the long run, because if you're always saying yes, you don't have boundaries.
Yeah.
You never have a chance to develop a sense of self because you're so busy trying to take care of everybody else around and the number of anxiety cases I see that come from people pleasing and just always saying yes. I mean, it's like chicken or the egg, which kind of comes first. And
Right.
so I really wish that people would get more comfortable with just saying no and being like, you know what, and then on the flip side of that, people getting okay with accepting if somebody says no.
Exactly.
You have to
Exactly.
be okay with that.
Yeah. Exactly. And see, and I think, and for the always saying yes thing, and again, I've gotten better with this. The problem with the always saying yes thing is people are non-confrontational. But
Oh
things
my
don't have,
gosh.
but things don't have to be a confrontation. The answer is no, and
Come
leave it
on.
at that. You don't have to argue with them. You don't have to, you don't have to argue your point or prove your point. If your answer is no, then leave it at that. You don't
It's a
have to
full and
always.
complete sentence.
So yeah, exactly. So and that's what I had to learn. And, I still have my moments here and there,
Sure.
but yeah, because my wife gets on me all the time for. She was like, "You're non-confrontational," and sometimes she's just like, "I wish you would just like, let people know. Look, I don't like this." But it's just trying to avoid confrontation. I think that's almost people's way of trying to, pretty it up when they say,
Yeah.
I'm not always saying yes. I just don't want to argue, or I just don't want to create conflict.
Right.
But you don't have to create conflict. Just say no
You
and then walk
don't.
away.
And walk away. I wish people understood that part. The example I always use with clients is like, if somebody asks you for a favor, right? And you really don't want to do it, and they say, but I don't want to make them feel bad, so I go ahead and do it. I said, well, why are their feelings more important than yours?
Yeah, exactly. Mm.
You know? And
Preach.
I'm like, it's the thing about a favor is that it's an ask. And if I ask you a question, and a question is it's a yes, what's the other half of that sentence? Or no question.
Yep.
So you're right. I could say, I could say yes, but I could also say no. And you have to prepare yourself for both of those. And there's no argument. Can you lend me $1 million? No. Why? No, like whether I got it or not, it's my $1 million. I mean, the answer for me would be because I ain't got it, but like in theory, you should always be prepared if you're asking something of someone for them to say no. And I think that is just one thing we're not taught. We're socialized to say yes to people. We're socialized like, oh no, someone asks you, you do it, if you can. And if you don't, then you're somehow selfish. No, no. Mm-mm. If you don't, you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you don't, you
Exactly.
can't give what you don't have.
Yep,
And that
exactly.
that doesn't just mean things like tangible things. It could be time, it could be energy, essence, all of those things. Sometimes you need to shut it down and say no.
Yep. And that's a mic drop right there. Well, um, so um, so yeah, I'm so thankful and grateful for your time on the Live and Learn podcast today. I'm sure those who listened and tuned in got a wealth of knowledge. And if people want to connect with you and learn more about you, how can they get in touch with you?
So you I shouldn't say that. You can always email me. It's Miss Raimi, Raimi, as in Nancy Ross, Ross at Gmail. I do practice under my maiden name. And so that's always the easiest way to get me. And the website is in progress right now. So not going to give you a broken URL, but I will happily put one in the show notes when it's up and running.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I just always, I think always a resource, always here. Mental health is my passion, mental wellness, particularly for people that look like us. And that does not just mean Black people, that means people our age group across the board, women in my case, just, Marylanders, just people that are ready to do the work. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
thank
And
you for having me.
thank you for tuning in to Deep Discussions Live and Learn podcast. You can check me out on deepdiscussion.org. If you like to be a guest, you can email me or contact me. My email address is beinspired@deepdiscussion.org, or you can contact me via phone 443-916-5009. And I'm also on all of the social media channels, Facebook, Instagram. I'm not on Twitter as much, but I'm on there. And
It's X now.
yeah, oh yeah, X. That's right. I'm annoyed by that, but whatever.
You should be. It's terrible.
It is. But yeah, if you like to get connected, if you like to share in the inspiration, contact me. I love inspiring people, but I also love partnering with people to inspire others. The more voices, the better. And I also, as you know, poetry is one of my greatest gifts. So if you're looking for a talented poet to come and deliver a message in a poetic way, I'm your guy. So thank you again so much for tuning in to Deep Discussion Live and Learn podcast. This is This has been great, Raimi. Thanks again. And this is Deep
Thank you so much for
Discussion,
having me.
Inspiration for a Better Tomorrow. Take care.